right, afternoon. I'm still Chris. I'm still an alcoholic. Uh, Again, I love doing this. I love doing this stuff with Chris. There's an economy to these steps that a lot of times we miss because we love to complicate things. We're the people that complicate the one car funerals. And when you look at the steps so often, like like let me ask you this: when you walked in and saw the 12 steps on the wall, was the first thing you thought of was, "Oh yeah, perfect. That's exactly what none of us have." So a lot of times deep down we think there's got to be something deeper. Like this may work on like mid-American scuttlefish, but like I'm kind of unique. I'm gonna need the extra dose of whatever. But there's an economy to this stuff, and if we just read and do the black part of the book, we can really move through this quickly, get a real spiritual experience, spiritual awakening, and we can recover from this hopeless state of mind and body. I'm gonna pick it up here. I'm gonna pick it up where Chris left off. I'm gonna pick it up at returning home, because I think this is something that I know I personally missed a number of times. I did my fifth step. I was all excited. And then the first time I went home to work on my character defects, for 6 months. That was the first thing I did. The next one I went right from the fifth step into writing 8-step cards. I saw what it said here, but I didn't think it would be necessary for me to do it. Why do people who really believe they're alcoholics not do the steps? Because they're hoping it won't be necessary. That's a big gamble to take. So I've become more and more conscious that following the directions as they're outlined in here, what that does for me is it gives me confidence that I have thoroughly followed the path, and I'll be rarely have someone seen me fail, which is what I want to be. I want to be, someone that's not going to fail. But it says here, returning home, we find a place where we can be quiet for an hour, carefully reviewing what we've done. We thank God from the bottom of our heart that we know him better. That's a prayer directive. So when it says something like, we thank God, that means you, you know what I mean? So please understand that. Taking the book down from the shelf, we turn to the page which contains the 12 steps, carefully reviewing the first 5 proposals. We ask if we've omitted anything. And then what he does is he uses a construction reference. We're building an arch. Like look at this arch behind me right here. If the cornerstone is not in place, if it's not constructed in a solid way completely, there's a good chance it's going to fall apart. And they're asking us to review our first 5 steps. And we're to take an hour to do this. And so step 1, am I thoroughly convinced that when I put alcohol in my body, it creates a physical craving that places me in a position where I have little control over the amount I take? Am I convinced that on my own willpower, I don't have the ability to stay separated from alcohol? Am I convinced of that? Have I honestly tried to quit drinking and found that alcohol was in my hand again? Have I reviewed that? And then there's a dash. There's a dash that our lives had become unmanageable. Do I understand what that unmanageability is? My first understanding, reading the steps off the wall, was, yeah, my life was unmanageable. I have 3 DUIs. My family left me. I've had 10 jobs in 10 years. I don't have any friends anymore. I got $100 car. yeah, my life is unmanageable. Now, what I was doing was I was using external things to prove the unmanageability of my life. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of non-alcoholics have those same issues. Um, I believe the unmanageability is an internal, emotional, spiritual unmanageability, the bondage of self they talk about in the book, Alcoholics Anonymous. And how that works with me is on a good day, I'm restless, irritable, and discontented. On a normal day, I'm prey to misery, depression, anxiety, guilt, shame, remorse, anger. And on a really bad day, it's the hideous four horsemen, terror, frustration, bewilderment, despair. So it's more of a spiritual, emotional unmanageability. Can I say yes to that? Absolutely. So, okay, I've taken care of step one. Do I really believe that in Alcoholics Anonymous and in the experience of the steps, I will be able to gain access to a power that'll work in me and through me and keep me safe and protected and push me into an area where I will be happily and usefully whole? Do I believe that? Yeah, okay. Let's move into step 3. Have I looked at the manifestations of self that had defeated me? Have I come to the conclusion that God could or would, if he were sought? If I seek God through the rest of these steps, do I believe that I'll be returned to sanity? Now, the first time I went through these steps, there's a little bit of doubt, but I go through the steps on an annual or semi-annual basis, whatever. So it's not like do I believe anymore? I know I have experience with this power greater than myself. So I can move through that step. Chris did a great job. Resentments, fears, conduct to others. Have I done this inventory? Have I followed the instructions in the book? Have I been fearless and thorough? Have I uncovered everything that the book is asking me to uncover? Yes, okay. Move forward. Have I disclosed all of this? Have I admitted this to myself, to another person, and to God? Have I been honest? Have I withheld anything? Because if there's anything I've withheld, what will happen is that will become a corrosive thread. And it can impact the rest of my recovery program. It gives us like 5 warnings in the book. If we hold back on this, if we don't do this step, if we hold back on this step. So have I been as honest as I possibly can be in this 5th step that I just did, an hour ago? Yes, I did the best I could. Then it moves us into step 6 and step 7. I really love step 6 and step 7. And there are 2 things that are true about step 6 and about step 7 that sound like they would go completely at odds. There are 2 statements that don't sound like they could fit together at all that I believe are both true. And one of them is you can do step 6 and 7 in 10 minutes. I mean, you follow the instructions in the book, boom, boom, boom. You're moving on to the 8th step list, right? And I believe that's true. And I believe that's the way that's the momentum we should have as we go through these spiritual exercises. But I also believe that step 6 and 7 will take me the rest of my life. Because it's spiritual growth. We grow in effectiveness and understanding, and that can happen over the course of years. It's my personal experience that that's basically the way it happened. And picture my defects of character like an iceberg, okay? Like 20% of an iceberg sticks up above the surface of the water, and you can see that part, but there's like 80% that's underneath that you can't see. So the character defects that are sticking up, that are glaringly obvious, those are the character defects I have that you can see. And and there's layers of manifestations of self that are below the surface. They're things that you're unless you get really close to me, you probably won't even recognize them. And they're things that I have to face on a daily basis. I don't believe that these steps make us perfect. I don't believe in the perfection of my spiritual being, in a recovered state. I'm not even sure they're designed to make us perfect. I think what they're designed to do is to make us useful, useful to other people. So I need to continue to concentrate on step 6 and on step 7. Step 6 is beautiful. Step 6 is so much. Step 6 is really abandoning the way I see a lot of things. Being open-minded, being willing to look at different ways of operating, different ways of thinking. There's a great story. I think it's in The Power of Now, and I'll share it because it'll give you an idea of what these levels are, what the different things you're going to evolve through looks like. And it's a story of little Joey. Little Joey's a little league baseball player, and one day he gets a toothache, a really bad toothache, and he doesn't say anything. There's a big game tomorrow, and he doesn't say anything, and he goes through the day, and it gets worse and worse and worse. Now he knows if he goes to his mother and says, "Mom, I got a terrible toothache," that things will, she has something that she can do that will take away that pain. But he doesn't say anything until finally, late at night, he's in bed, and finally gets out of bed and he goes down, "Mom, my tooth is killing me." And she's like, "Why didn't you tell me?" And she gets out the aspirin, crushes up the aspirin. Well, the reason why he didn't tell his mother was he knew that there would be some relief from his toothache if he did tell her. But tomorrow there's going to be a phone call to Dr. Mengele, the dentist. And he's going to be sitting in this chair with drills and needles and blood and pain and smoke coming out of his mouth. And, he knows that after that, he's going to walk out with perfect teeth. Everything will be fixed. He doesn't want perfect teeth. He just wants the pain to go away. And that's why he doesn't tell his mother, right? So a lot of times that's the way we are. We look at the character defects that make us uncomfortable, that we feel the pain from. But there's levels of character defects that we have, manifestations of self that we have that can take many, many years to deal with. So I believe we need to stay really current with the exercises of 6 and 7, 8 and 9, 10, 11, so the whole thing. I believe that because we operate under the assumption that these 12 steps are a way of life, what happens is we grow in understanding and we grow in effectiveness. Now, again, there's many character defects that we'd love to have removed. And from what I have seen, I'm not in charge of the character defects that get removed or when they get removed, but they're removed. Like I'll tell you this, my road rage removed. I didn't work on it. I haven't done a road rage thing. I haven't chased somebody past my exit, to get them, in like 20 years. So that's something that was removed. A lot of the character defects that block me off from being useful to you get removed. A lot of the things that are kind of annoying to me can hang on. And that lets me understand that it's the power that's in charge of this whole thing. I need to place myself in the spiritual climate for the removal of these character defects. That's my job. Making the environment ready for the removal of these character defects. But like my alcoholism, I can't go up against them. And many times I can't go up against them head on. And I'm just never going to be selfish again from this day forward. Start, good luck with that. So step 6 and 7, and there's a wonderful prayer. And if you look at the prayers in this book, it's not about, please take away these defects of character so that I can be awesome. That's not the point of all this. It's always, please take away the character defects that block me off from my usefulness to others. And, again, a lot of times that really goes at odds with the way I've lived and the way I've believed. Some of the first exercises my sponsor ever gave me to do were service commitments, and they were really strange, and I didn't understand them, but he would ask me to do something without getting anything back in return. Like, go do this. Well, why? Well, go over and help so-and-so. I don't even know so-and-so. It didn't make sense to me, but he started to give me exercises in giving back and being compassionate and having, to develop a service ethic. And I think all these steps really, really head us in that direction. So I've looked at step 6. I've looked at step 7. I've said a prayer, a humble prayer, a prayer of, these things have defeated me. They are the roadblocks to my happiness. They're blocking me off from the sunlight of the Spirit. Please, remove these defects of character. And then I move into step 8. And a lot of the list is already done of the people in the institutions that I've harmed. It comes from the resentment inventory. It comes from the sex conduct inventory. And what I personally do is I assemble them into a new list. I don't use my 4-step for my amends list. I put them all down. What I do is I use index cards, and I put down the people in the institutions that I've harmed. And I try to be really clear, just like Chris was saying, we have to be really clear with the resentment. It has to be as truthful as we can get. We have to be the same way with our resentment inventory. If we've harmed someone, we have to be clear about the harm. We acted like a jerk. No, that's not good enough. You have to be more specific. So I'll put down the person in the institution, and I'll be really, really clear about the harm. How did I harm them? I borrowed money and never paid it back. That's an easy one. But with family and stuff like that, it can get a little bit deeper. But I have to be as clear as possible. Now, there's many ways to do this. I am also like Chris. I don't care if you've got a 4-column inventory, a 15-column inventory with a turnaround and a flip over, and there's just as long as you're answering the questions that the book is asking, as long as you're not doing that stuff instead of, that would be the problem. The problem I would have. But in these index cards, it'll have the person, it'll have the harm, and I'll have the people come over and meet with me. And what we'll do is we'll discuss those particular amends. I do not want people running off making amends without having a discussion. Too many times I've seen people cause additional harm. That's really the risk with these amends, that you can actually cause additional harm if you're not following the spirit of the amends, the instructions that are in the book. So they'll come over and they'll sit and we'll go through every single card and we'll come to a consensus. I don't come from a sponsorship line where, I am in charge of you for the rest of your life. Don't buy a car or marry a woman until you've covered it with me. I'm like this big book guy. If it's in the big book, I follow it, but there's warnings. There's warnings in our literature about a number of things when it comes to amends. And I want to be sure that someone is going to make the approach and then move forward into the amends with the right attitude and taking the right action. So they'll come over and we'll go through these cards. And a lot of times I find that they haven't written a card for someone I know they really need to make an amends for. And a lot of times they'll have cards for people that they really, it's not really appropriate to make an amends. I don't know if this has ever happened to Chris, but a lot of times, I'd say at least 5 times in the past 20 years, someone has come up to me and said this, I really need to make an amends to you, Chris. I really I thought for a while you were a horse's ass, and I used to just talk bad about you, and you spread all this crap around, and, tell everybody what kind of a lame brain you are and everything. And, I don't do that anymore, so sorry. Well, I was having a good day. You know what I mean? Like, come on. Come on. We don't take all the garbage on our side of the street and then dump it on somebody else's. That's not really what we do. So that's just one example of an amends gone wrong. I'll give you another example of an amends gone wrong. This guy, I sent him off to do his cards, and he jumped right in without coming back over and talking to me. And it was an amends. It was amends having to do with stepping out on the little misses. Okay, it says in the book some of us have done things. I think that's a typo, Chris. Right? Some of us have done that. So what he does is he sits down with his wife and he tells her right to her face about the 3 affairs he's had with people at work. And she freaked out and literally beat him so badly that he almost lost an eye, and then forced him to tell her who they were and then put lawsuits against these women. And this had happened years, this had happened like 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And all of a sudden these poor women are getting lawsuits, for unprotected sex risk or, whatever. And it was an absolute nightmare. Now, if he would have come over, I would have read the part where it says, should we tell them? Not always, we think. And there's instructions in this. We don't want to make people's lives worse. We don't want to cause any additional harm. It says if they know already, should we give them details? And then it says, no, we can't really give them details where it concerns other people, but we can certainly admit that we've been wild or whatever. There's great instruction in these amends, and it prevents us from causing additional harm. Now, here's a story I tell a lot because it makes a lot of sense, and I like the way I tell it. There's a guy that I started sponsoring years ago, 20-some years ago, and he came from a very rough area. He came from a very rough city in New Jersey, and he just grew up, in tough circumstances, and he just had a different worldview and perspective than I did. He ended up, coming to, in my hometown, and starting to go to meetings. He was in such rough shape that he was mute, like for the first year. He would only like grunt at you. He'd been drinking and doing like 40 Percocets a day for he just had a long way to come back. But he was willing, and he kept showing up, and he kept doing what people were asking him to do. And I ended up sponsoring him. So we're riding together to a meeting one time, and we stopped at a convenience store to get a cup of coffee, on our way to the meeting. And as we're walking out of the convenience store, he does this. And he takes a pack of cigarettes and quick puts it in his pocket as we're walking out the door. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. Did you just steal a pack of cigarettes? And he goes, no. And I go, well, let me ask you this way. Did you grab a pack of cigarettes and put them in your pocket without paying as we walked out? And he goes, yeah. And I go, then you stole a pack of cigarettes. And he goes, no. I go, what do you mean no? He goes, it was from the rack up front. You're a chump if you don't take those. They budget for that, And I'm like, time out. Sponsorship summit here, and he was moving through the steps, and he was very, very willing. So after our talk, he put cards together, and then he put envelopes together, and he put a lot of money in a lot of envelopes. And he went back to every single convenience store that he could remember stealing from. Went up to the manager. I stole stuff. Here's the money. I was wrong. If I don't do this, I'll drink. Thanks. Right. And he, about 20 envelopes with lots of money, and he did that because of his willingness. Let me ask you this: do you think he still steals cigarettes after an experience like that? I believe one of the best climates or spiritual atmospheres we can be in for the removal of our character defects is to become willing to make amends where those defects of character have caused harm, and to actually go out and make amends where those character defects have caused harm, where the manifestations of self have placed us in a position to harm others. So there's a line in the 12 and 12 that says, God will not render us white as snow without our cooperation. And then the thing that I read earlier, where our spiritual disobedience to spiritual principles, I think it's all connected, and we need to make this effort. We're living along spiritual lines, or we're attempting to live along spiritual lines now. So we have to really put the effort in. If I could add one word to the book Alcoholics Anonymous, it would be actually in front of the 9th step. Because where I got sober, there was 12 and 12 meetings until the cows came home. There was no big book meetings, but in the 12 and 12 meetings, people would share about, oh, I love this step. This is my favorite step. And let me tell you what I think this step is about. I haven't done it formally, but let me tell you, what's I agree with this step. And that's what you're. So I think the exercise is to actually do this stuff. And I think this is where we need the power of God the most. Because there's something, at least with me, there was something that really, really tried to force me to balk on these amends. I did not want to do this. I was wrong. I just didn't want to do it. There was something still deep inside me that I didn't want to look stupid. I didn't want to look weak. I didn't want to get arrested, whatever. And there was amends where I would sit in the car and I would do a meditation. Someone taught me to do this meditation. And it's basically this. You breathe in, God. Breathe out, fear. Breathe in, God. Breathe out, fear. And I remember sitting in the car doing that breathing meditation for a half an hour. And then all of a sudden, I'd open the door and I'd go in. I'd go in. And it wasn't a very comfortable step for me to do. But no step added more power and more freedom into my life than the 9th step. No step added more power or more freedom into my life than this step. I can honestly tell you today that there's not a road, there's not a town, there's not a business that I wouldn't feel 100% comfortable walking into, because I cleaned up so much of the stuff that had me ducking and weaving. and certainly all the family, certainly all the relationships that I was in, certainly all the places that I stole from, and friends that I disrespected and harmed and, just acted like a jerk with. I've done all those. I continue to do them because as you move into step 10, I believe is the step that gives us the entirety of these spiritual principles to practice in a reactive way. This is the step where we start applying these things as a way of life. So when I hurt somebody, make amends quickly. Do you resent somebody? Write the inventory. Do this in a reactive way. Now, when we went through the steps, we cleaned up an enormous amount of our life. It's now asking us to clean this stuff up and deal with this stuff up, all this stuff today. You know what I mean? Let's take care of this today. And I've found that it is so beneficial to me to do this because I don't carry around a negative emotional burden when I take care of it right away. It's very easy. My ego wants to say, well, I didn't really, well, I kind of did harm him, but, he started it. There's all this stuff. My ego wants to engage in that discussion. These steps want us to not engage in that discussion, to do this as a way of life, as a spiritual exercise. Let's just get this done. Let's just live this way. Step 11. From a very young age, from the earliest memories I can remember are memories of separation and self-centered fear. Now, I'm not saying non-alcoholics don't experience this. I'm sure they do. But being emotionally sensitive, I think that what it did was it molded my life in such a way that, I became incredibly self-conscious, self-centered, and always felt apart from, and always felt that vacancy. There's something not right in me. And when I discovered alcohol, I discovered that would fill the vacancy for a while. When I discovered cocaine, that would fill the vacancy and I could get a lot of talking done. I could be on the same sentence for 6 hours. And when I discovered benzos and when I discovered opiates, there's a little bit of something that'll temporarily fill this gap, this God hole, whatever you want to call, this feeling of not rightness. And I felt like that from a child. Now, I remember there was a period of time in the 70s, this is long before I got sober, that I started to look towards spiritual literature. I was drawn to it. And it was wacky spiritual literature. It was like Carlos Castaneda, and the spirituality of peyote. That's what interested me, the high times type of self-help. But I was reaching for something that, I was always looking for something. There's something wrong, and, I want to figure it out and feel good about myself. And so my whole experience drinking, 20 years of drinking, toward the end of my drinking, I wasn't looking for any spiritual literature anymore. But there was a period of time where I looked for it. And then when I first got sober, I went after the Hazelton stuff, every recovery book you could find, every self-help book you could find. I bought it and I read it. And what it would do is it would make me feel a little bit warm and fuzzy, temporarily, just like a drink would, because there was no fundamental change. And I remember my sponsor shows up at my house. I'm about a year sober. and he comes over and he's looking over my bookshelf. I've got a lot of books, right? He's looking over my bookshelf and he goes, wow, Chris, I see that you have a lot of self-help books here. And I'm like, yeah, Phil, yeah. And he goes, can I ask you something? Sure, Phil. He goes, can you show me where your help others books are? And I'm like, huh? I'm unfamiliar with that category, Phil. What aisle in Barnes and Noble can you find those at? And what he was saying was, I'm working on the wrong patient. You understand what I'm saying? I'm working on the wrong person. So in Alcoholics Anonymous, the whole process is about fitting us to be of maximum service to God and our fellow man. And strangely enough, it's through that I am healed. It's through that I gain serenity, peace, and a real purpose in life. That's what I've learned. I've learned my purpose comes from this service ethic. Now, the math doesn't work, right? You would think if you want what you want, you want to be happy, then you concentrate on that. You concentrate on making you happy. You get all the self-help books, go to all the courses, figure it all out, make a lot of money, get a lot of toys. But that doesn't fill the vacancy that's keeping us from feeling like we're at the right place at the right time with the right people. Now, in step 11, it's asking us to seek through prayer and meditation a deeper relationship with this power that's keeping us safe and protected. And if we've gone all the way up to step 11, this power is working in us and through us, and it's no longer a theory, it's an experience. So it's asking us to broaden and deepen this relationship with God through prayer and meditation. And there's three basic parts of step 11. As we retire at night, as we move through the day, and upon awakening. And I'm not going to read this stuff, read your own book, find your own experience. But by actually doing those particular disciplines and doing them as a discipline, and I believe they need to become a discipline. We need to work at this. We can't go in to step 11 half measures if we really want the depth and the weight and the power that this step has to offer. Think about it this way. Let's say you want to get in shape. You want to get stronger. So you're going to go to the gym. You go to the gym and you lift some weights a couple of times and you're like, these weights are heavy. This sucks, Chris. This is dumb. There's some great stuff on Netflix. I'll catch you later, and that's your experience. That's, you're not going to get any stronger. But if you go to the gym and 4 times a week and you do the exercises, you're going to get stronger. And it's not going to matter if you still think it's stupid. If you're doing it this really is stupid. This is the 4th day, this week that I've been doing this. It's not going to matter whether you think it's stupid or it's not going to work. You're going to get the results. The same thing with these spiritual disciplines. A lot of times, many of us have some doubts about this spiritual life. We have some doubts about the interventionary power of God. Will God really come in and do this for me? If you do these disciplines, even with some of those doubts, you're going to get the benefit of step 11, and you're going to grow in understanding and effectiveness, and you're going to grow in connection with not only God, but with your fellow man. And I think that's really important for us to come back into community. Now, I've been very, very interested in the study of God, the study of religions, the study of spirituality, the study of mystics. I've been really drawn to this in the last 30 years, just reading about it. Gives me great comfort to know I'm not the only person out there who's struggling, who's trudging this road of happy destiny toward a deeper spiritual experience. The world has been filled with it, but I've gained a lot of understanding about how other people and other traditions do it. I truly believe that this is why we're here. The purpose that we're on this planet is to grow spiritually and grow in connection with God and to fill this vacancy with a relationship with God. I believe that that's why we're here. Another thing that I've studied a lot is cosmology. I've studied a lot. Right now, we're going through an incredible time where the Hubble telescope and all these telescopes in Chile and everything, every day there's a new amazing vision of the universe and a new understanding about our reality and where we are. You know what I mean? Where we are in God's vision. And I believe that I believe we are manifestations of God, part of this creation, and we've been given self-awareness, and we've been given self-knowledge, and we've been given the ability to operate, on our own, and it's an incredible gift. And here we are, manifestations of God's wonderful universe. And every day I'm more and more grateful that I have an opportunity. I get to experience this wonderful gift that God has given me. And I get to experience it with all of you. And I believe we are all one. We're all part of the expression of God in his manifestation. And I see no problem with taking that science and connecting it to spirituality. Because really, truly, what I believe is, I believe the Big Bang can be seen as let there be light, and I'm really, really grateful to be here. I'm so grateful to be hanging with my buddy Chris. Thank you.